Brian Laundrie's full autopsy released with some gruesome new details according to this article. So grisly new details emerged Monday in the death of Brian Laundrie, including that his scattered bones had been gnawed on by rodents and feral dogs after his death, which, by the way, this really isn't, that surprising because of the location that he, died in, right? By suicide. It kind of makes sense that wild animals would just basically eat him. Like, it makes perfect sense. So Laundrie, 23, died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head that caused extensive fractures in his skull, according to a newly released report by a Florida medical examiner's office. The single bullet entered his brain at the left temple and exited through the right, traveling slightly upward, said the full autopsy and forensic report. Authorities recovered the vast majority of his skeleton, aside from a few bones from his teeth and his face scattered in plain sight, they said. His bones showed signs of gnawing and chewing from post-mortem scavenging carnivore activity, including on portions of his arms and legs, the report said. These areas are consistent with carnivores and/or omnivores, including canines such as feral dogs and coyotes, along with rodents and raccoons, the report said. So Laundrie's toxicology report showed no sign of drug use, the document said. Authorities also found personal items at the scene belonging to the young man, including a pair of green shorts, slip-on shoes, a white metal ring, a backpack, and a handgun on the dirt ground. The scene was secluded by overgrown vegetation, the document said. The firearm found next to the remains was a Windicator revolver with 2 live rounds and 1 used round of ammunition, according to the report. At the nearby secondary scene, authorities found animal skeletal remains, a handwritten half note, and a Mob coffee roaster's hat, according to the report. Authorities also located a dry bag with the Laundrie's journal and a wooden box with a small notebook and a picture of himself. His body was believed to be submerged in up to 30 feet of water in the Florida swamp for an extended period of time, the examiner said, and when the swamp waters receded, his remains were discovered, and the scene was excavated by authorities to search for additional bones and personal items that might have been buried, and the uprooted dirt was placed in 5-gallon tubs and sifted through, the document said. Authorities used dental records provided by Laundrie's dentist to identify the skeletal remains, as well as genetic material from one of his teeth and 2 femur bones that they matched with DNA swabs taken from his parents. The report said Laundrie took no medications and didn't have a primary care physician, and authorities said they asked his parents about their son's social history, but that Mr. and Miss Laundrie stated they did not want to provide that information. Laundrie was sought in Gabby Petito's disappearance and death when his remains were discovered at the 25,000-acre Carlton Reserve near his parents' home in Northport, Florida on October 20th. See, the young couple was on a cross-country trip when Petito, a 22-year-old Long Island native, went missing, and Laundrie returned home in her van without her September 1st, and her remains were found in Wyoming campground on September 19th. Now, here's the thing, right? The sad part about this whole story, which of course, that the girl lost her life, that's obviously sad. But the sad part, on top of that, is that no one really knows why, right? No one knows why he may have killed her. Again, because technically, there's still no actual proof that he did it, because he killed himself before they could prove anything, right? So, technically speaking, it is not proven that he killed her, but it's basically like a 99.99% likelihood that he did, and he took the coward's way out by killing himself. But the reality of the situation is that no one knows why he did it, right? And the thing is, even if he were to have told his parents, which he probably didn't, you're still not going to know, right? Even if he did actually tell them, you're still not going to know because they're not going to tell anyone. Why? Because they'd probably also get arrested too if they were to actually reveal why did he do it? What happened? Like what caused everything? Like what were the events, the actual events that led to this situation? Like no one's going to know. And like this is kind of like a story that's probably going to end up on one of those like murderino radio shows or podcasts out there that exist, right? But it's going to be an episode that doesn't really have that much content within it. Like, there's not much of a story because there's just so many questions surrounding it, right? Now, what one could learn from this story, from this whole situation, is that you got to be very careful who you plan on trying to spend the rest of your life with, right? Because I believe they were actually fiancés, like fiancé, fiancé, right? You got to be very careful who you end up choosing to spend the rest of your life with. Because who knows, they might have this type of side to them where they might just react kind of bad, and well, what do you know? One of you is like disappearing, right? So it's just something to like really think about. Because if you were to have known about this story at any given point, or heard about this story at any given point, there's just not enough information at all to understand any of it, right? Like, you don't really know what happened in the car that got the attention of, like, cops back then. You don't really know what might have happened when they went camping. You don't really know what happened inside the whole, like, forest thing. You don't really know what happened. I mean, the only thing you could really know that happened in, like, that one campground area that his remains were found was that, oh, he just decided to kill himself. But in terms of like what he did during that time frame of people searching for him, what he did with his fiance at the time, what did they do right beforehand, like what was their mental states, what was going on, what was being said, because you got to think about it too, right? To actually go and I believe she was strangled. To strangle the person that you plan on marrying is one, extremely dark. Two, what could have possibly set you off to go to that level of a reaction, right? If there was even a reaction, right? Perhaps the guy was just a psychopath, right? But the thing is, if he really was, he wouldn't have probably killed himself because he wouldn't have cared, right? So the way that I view it is that perhaps something might have been said or he might have reacted to something without thinking, basically killing her in kind of like a crime of passion, and ended up realizing like, oh crap, I literally just killed her, ran to his parents for help, probably didn't tell them actually anything because he realized, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to get them in trouble. So then he ends up basically making like a run for it, trying to hide away, and basically deciding the best route is for him to just probably kill himself because he probably can't handle jail or prison and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't want to like deal with the whole turmoil of that. Or maybe he just doesn't want any of the facts to come out about the whole thing. So it's definitely pretty interesting because there's just so many stones not uncovered, right? There's so many questions still left remaining. If you stumble upon this, feel free to give your thoughts about this situation because it is a very odd situation.